The Ricoh GR3 is special to me. It's been my daily driver for the past 2 years. A convenient tool that I have with me at all times. My trusty little companion on the streets. The GR3 encourages experimentation. It makes me want to shoot. It also introduced me to a community of like-minded users and gave me a rare opportunity to work with the company that created the camera. In a way, I don't think I could have achieved any of my personal goals in the past 2 years if it wasn't for the GR3. No other camera has ever made me feel this way. I've always been intrigued by the GR line of cameras. As a Dido fanboy, how could I not be? But I never owned any of them before the GR3, mainly because these GR cameras didn't always have the greatest reviews. The people I knew who had them always complained about the camera's reliability, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to spend on a camera with this kind of reputation. The reason why I ended up buying a GR3 was actually quite simple, to be honest. I wanted to challenge myself to make a decent photo every day for a year. I thought it would be a good way to force myself to practice and get better at photography. And to do that, I needed a proper camera that I could have with me at all times. I wanted portability and good image quality. I didn't care much about anything else. The GR3 seemed like the perfect fit. The first thing you'll notice if you're new to the GR cameras is how nice and balanced it feels in your hands. The weight of the camera is just right, heavy enough to exude quality, but still light so you won't get tired carrying it around all day. There's a bit of a rattle in the camera, but that's just the sensor shifting when the image stabilizer is turned off. Nothing really to worry about. The buttons aren't the most satisfying to press. The shutter button feels a little mushy. They are, however, laid out perfectly for one-handed operation. It allows for you to quickly adjust your settings on the fly. Everything makes sense here, and this is huge for street photography. Given the camera's size, the 3-inch screen in the back is very generous. It is clear, has minimal lag, the touch functions are responsive, and most importantly, it gives you an accurate preview of your images. You won't get blown away by the camera when you first see it, and it won't have the same wow factor that you get with the bigger flagship models from other brands. That's just what the GR is all about. Understated, subtle, simple, and clean. The magic happens when you start to shoot with it. As a candid street shooter, I like to stay hidden amongst the crowds. Many street photographers like to make their presence known, but I prefer a more subtle approach. The size of this camera takes that attention away from me on the streets. People feel less threatened by it. It looks like you're holding a phone, or maybe even a small wallet. The GR3 pushed me to try things that I would have never thought of doing with another camera. It encourages you to get closer to your subjects and to experiment with different angles. The 28mm focal length in this camera has also become second nature to me. Coming from the X100 series, I always thought 35 matched my eye the best. I guess I was wrong. .28 is so easy to work with once you've spent some time practicing, and it offers a ton of flexibility for street photography. At f2.8, the lens isn't the quickest out there, but it performs just fine in low light. The image stabilization works wonders. And I also have no problem pushing the ISO to 3200. The noise looks natural, almost like film grain, and doesn't take away from the image. Another standout feature that I use all the time with the GR3 is snap focus. This function essentially allows you to zone focus, which in my opinion is one of the keys to success in street photography. From what I know, there's no other camera out there that offers this type of auto zone focusing function. The way I have my GR3's focus set up prepares me for almost every situation. A hard press on the shutter triggers snap focus at 1.5 meters. A light half press activates its normal multi-area autofocus. And by touching the screen, I can manually select a very specific point of focus. I can switch between all three of these modes without ever using the menus. This again is huge for what I do. The image quality of the GR3 is superb. The lens in the camera is razor sharp, actually quite impressive given how small it is. The images render really nicely, but sometimes I find that the colors tend to come out a bit cooler than I want. It's not a huge issue as the raw files are very easy to work with in post. I've been printing a lot of my work from the past 2 years, many of which taken with the GR3. The tones look great, the details are very sharp. I love how these look. With the larger prints, you can really start to see how your camera performs. And the GR3 is no slouch here. When compared to my Leica 28mm Elmarit, I'd say the Leica is a bit sharper, but it's barely noticeable. The GR3's 24-megapixel sensor, combined with its tiny ultra-sharp lens, is a setup that punches way above its weight class. If your images can look this good printed, I don't think you'll have much to worry about when viewing them on your screens and phones. So I think I'm making the GR3 sound like the perfect camera. Not quite. The one complaint you'll hear the most about the GR3 is its battery life. Given its size, it's understandable. But for someone who takes as many photos as I do, I found the experience a little frustrating. It's something I've gotten used to though. I work around it. I turn the camera off when I'm just walking, and on when I anticipate a shot. Ideally, I would like to have my camera on the whole time when I'm shooting on the streets. I think I've missed quite a few moments because of this method that I use to conserve battery. You'll also hear people talk about the GR having poor build quality issues. Yes and no. Around a month ago, I noticed that the control ring on the back of the camera wasn't working properly. The way my camera is set up, I never really had to use the control ring, so it might have stopped working a while, and I just didn't notice it. This didn't bother me that much. I can still shoot with it without any problems. I've also dropped the camera around 2 to 3 times total since owning it. The camera is still intact and it works well. The ring in the front isn't loose. The screen's not cracked. That should say something about the camera's toughness. Then there's the problem of getting dust in the sensor. I've had quite a few people ask me about this. The design of the camera, unfortunately, does make it prone to dust entering through the front element. Personally, I haven't had that issue yet. I take care of my cameras. I keep my pockets and my camera bags very clean. I point the camera down in windy conditions, and I'll use the in-camera sensor cleaning function from time to time. So far, so good. The last thing I'd like to mention is the lack of weather sealing. Again, I understand how hard it is to implement this in a camera of this size. But this is something I hope Ricoh looks into for future GR cameras. I would really love to be able to shoot in the rain or snow without fear of the camera dying on me. It would open up a lot more creative possibilities for my photography. I think the way I view cameras these days is very different from how I did a couple years back. Before, it was all about the specs. The endless chase to find that perfect camera. I broke out of this mold with the GR3. I took a chance at something that I probably wouldn't have if I stuck to my old criteria. And it turned out to be the best camera purchase I've ever made. The GR3 gives me a feeling that I don't get with other cameras. I can't tell you exactly what that is, but it just feels right for me. Two years later, the GR3 really does feel like it's a part of me. As I mentioned earlier, it's my companion on the streets. It made me practice more, taught me to see differently. And slowly, I began to see a transformation in my photography. And for that, I think it's worth every single penny.